Subscribe to our channel for all the latest stuff from the world of football. And here we go. We're back again with Off the Woodwork, our podcast where we give you everything football from news analysis all the way to memes. And this is Game Week Review time. So it's been a cracker of a game week that we had this weekend, starting off from the Premier League where we had the legendary Merseyside derby happening. Yes, it was Liverpool versus Everton, and like always, as much as I can remember, this ended in a draw. But this also put a big statement out there that Liverpool has dominated this derby for the entire decade. And to bring you more on this, Shankar, what's your opinion and your thoughts from the game that you saw?
As you said, Liverpool has dominated this fixture for a very long time. But, under Ancelotti, Everton were looking like a new side. And this season, they've head off to a really great start. So, the match was pretty hyped up because Everton, the table leaders versus the champions, Liverpool. And I'd say the match actually lived up to its billing. I think the score of 2-2 is justified. Liverpool were playing with their usual style, with a 4-3-3 where Firmino comes to the middle and the fullbacks push up. Then Everton were also playing with a 4-3-3 on paper, but it shifted to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2-1-3 in times with Doucouré going there. So at certain sections, Liverpool were stronger. At certain sections, Everton were stronger. So I think both the teams were wanting to win, but they were also wary of each other. They showed certain respect to each other, and it was very good. I think the most important thing that came out of this match was actually Van Dijk's injury. I think that injury will actually affect how the title challenge of Liverpool goes. Pretty excited to see how Liverpool cope with it.
Yeah, so on that note, once again, if I may say, there's a very famous saying in football which says that if you have a good attack, you win games, but if you have a good defense, you win leagues. So Trishita, bringing you on this, so Van Dijk seems probably to be out for a long time for Liverpool. So how do you think this is going to affect the chances of Liverpool retaining the Premier League title or challenging the UCL or whatever that be? I mean, Van Dijk is a big influence in a dressing room, and even his intimidating presence can bring about changes in games. So, how big of a difference is that absence going to make?
Yes, obviously, Mayank, is going to be a very big miss for Jurgen Klopp. As he rightly stated after the match in the press conference that probably we are going to miss him for a very long time. And they are looking for options, actually short-term options in the winter. But before that, maybe there's a chance that Fabinho might play alongside Joe Gomez in a few matches, or they will try out that combination definitely. This is a new territory, I would say, for Liverpool. So this injury is much more like with a bigger impact than any other injuries Liverpool had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, another talking point from the game was rather the controversial VAR decision that took place in the 93rd minute that overruled Jordan Henderson's goal. If from the viewer's perspective, when we are looking at our TV screens, the lines seem to just overlap each other, and that seemed like a pretty harsh decision at least for the Liverpool side because they really worked hard for that goal. And this is VAR has been a controversial topic. So bringing Bora on this, what do you think? Should there be some fine tuning of the rule? Like there should be at least this amount of distance between the two lines or the two body parts to be termed it as a offside, etc.
I had always been opposed to VAR because obviously there are no hard and fast rules about it. It's all about the interpretation of the match, no match official. And there was not just this one. There were two contentious calls by the VAR referee. The first one was the Virgil van Dijk, the tackle on Virgil van Dijk by Jordan Pickford. Had there not been VAR and had he not been declared offside, it could have resulted in a straight red card for Jordan Pickford and a penalty for Liverpool. So that was one topic of debate. And the second one, of course, the stoppage time winner that was ruled out. And from the looks of it, I think it is very close. It is very difficult to judge whether he was offside or not, or which part of his body was offside, because as you said, the line seemed to overlap and it was not very clear. It was not at all clear. The referee, the match official went in favor of Everton, and I'm happy this game ended in a draw because neither of the teams, deserve to lose because Everton as a side, they matched Liverpool toe to toe, stride to stride. And had they lost it in the last minute of stoppage time, it would have been really unfair on their part, I think.
Yep. So it was so congratulations to the Liverpool side who had maintained a decade-long dominance over their Merseyside neighbours.
I think there's another record of a Mo Salah. He scored 100 goals for
Yeah,
Liverpool, and that too faster than I think the likes of Fowler, Daglish. So it was a good feat for him as well.
So moving on from the Merseyside hangover, let's go on to another big game that happened this weekend in the Premier League, and it's between Manchester City and Arsenal. So Himanshu, bringing you on this again, your quick thoughts on how your side performed and how do you fancy like Arsenal chances this season, especially with the Big Six?
it was a difficult fixture. Obviously, going to Etihad, playing Man City away, it's always a difficult fixture. And with Arsenal's poor record against the Big Six away from home, so we as Arsenal fans did not expect much out of this game.
Yeah.
But even though I was happy with the performance, happy with the defensive shift that Arsenal put in, but I was really frustrated with how Arteta lined up the attack. He decided to play Willian centrally when we had Lacazette and Nketiah sitting on the bench. We had two strikers sitting on the bench, and he decided to go with a winger, to support Oba and Nicola Pepe up front. So I think that was one tactical move that I did not understand, and also there was a genuine lack of creativity in the midfield, and
If I may add here, Riyad Mahrez, he's like sort of aging like fine wine. I mean, every season he keeps on getting better. We all thought like Mahrez would be like pinnacle of his career would be the win with Leicester in 2015-16, right? But ever since he moved to Manchester City, at first I thought it was going to be like a Scott Sinclair move where he will not realize his potential. But no, he's proving it again and again that he deserves to be there at the topmost quality. So, Trishita, any thoughts on that?
He won aerial duels. How can I not see that? Because first half it was very difficult for Man City to build up the play because Arsenal were playing short passes, no,
Yeah.
and so Riyad Mahrez was very important. And after that campaign against Leicester, he was looking for a big move, but he couldn't find his feet at Man City. And now finally, after so many seasons of warming the bench, he has finally realized and showed his potential to Pep that he can trust him. So basically, Man City were very difficult to predict how they are playing. The average positions, if you observe after the match, was very non-typical of a Guardiola side. They were playing three man on the back wide, and Raheem Sterling was playing in midfield. Cancelo was pushing infield. The man who was driving them forward, and Mahrez was just looking for passes, short passes between the lines. So I think it was a very well structured Guardiola display against his apprentice, deserving him.
On that note, I know Shankardeep has a little soft spot for Liverpool. So let me just ask you this directly. With the offing of the injury of Van Dijk, do you really think Manchester City are going to topple the champions this year again?
To be very honest, if you look at Manchester City over last season and whatever this season has transpired, to be honest, Manchester City also doesn't have a perfect defense.
Yeah.
And I won't say that, City are obviously, they have one of the best teams on paper in the entire European continent, right? So you can't count them out. But, it's Guardiola. I think he can tweak a few things and contend for a title again.
Just a small trivia here. Manchester City has spent the highest in their defense amongst all the European top flight clubs ever in the history, and still it's not good enough. Probably it means money can't buy everything. So moving on from that point, let me just quickly go through the game between Chelsea and Southampton. So Trishita, I remember there was once one of your legendary players, Jimmy Greaves, who was a very free scoring striker back in his day. And there was a time when I guess Chelsea had a match with some team and they won it 7-6 or something like that. And Greaves was so angry that he went up to his defenders in a post-match interview and said, how many more goals do you want us to score before we can win? So I think a similar situation is happening with Chelsea presently. Like, when are they going to win, man? I mean, how many more goals they need? What's wrong? They have one of the best defenders in the world playing their back, and they have spent the money. They have changed their goalkeepers. What is lacking for your club?
It's again brewing. The rage is brewing again between the attackers and the defensive line. So I can see Chilwell was very good on the ball that day. Apart from that, the defense was in shambles, and especially in the second half. 3 errors by Kepa in this particular season, which is more than any other player. So obviously the problem is Kepa Arrizabalaga, and Zuma and Christensen are just recipe for disaster playing with Kepa. So
Yeah.
I don't think like we will
If
be winning with this combination again,
if I
ever
can throw
again.
you if I can throw you one more question. So there has been a lot of noise in the fan forums saying that, if it was any other person other than Lampard on the reins, he would have been goodbye by now.
Probably because last season was a test, was like a small test for him, and this one
Yeah,
is the real hurdle begins. So if
yeah,
he doesn't win matches, he'll be gone. Maybe by Boxing Day he will be gone if he doesn't win matches.
They've
But
spent a
Especially,
lot of money. They've spent a
yeah,
lot of money,
exactly.
so no
With
chances.
the amount of money that Lampard has spent, I think Roman Abramovich is going to be very cruel on him if he doesn't
yeah,
perform.
yeah. So
sure.
results need to start showing up for Chelsea team. And other than that, okay. So let me take a moment out, and this is like a Aston Villa appreciation 10 seconds, because they are one of the clubs along with AC Milan who have maintained a perfect record as far the start of the season. They have had 4 out of 4 wins, and man, they've been playing phenomenally. So I think the breakout clubs this season have been Leeds, Everton, and Aston Villa from the Premier League point of view. So moving on from Premier League now, we've had some really good action coming, not good action, like rather surprising action coming from the world of Spanish football. So Shankar, bringing you in, you're a hardcore Real Madrid supporter. So how do you feel that Barcelona and Real Madrid, they're quite like brothers in arms and losing points at the same day before the Clasico, so that they have the same level of morale going into the game. So was it all like planned?
Okay, so first of all, coming to Real Madrid, I think it's the same problem that has been going for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
If Benzema or Ramos isn't scoring, then we are means literally begging for goals, and that's the problem. The goal that we conceded against Cadiz, it was a defensive mistake. To be very honest, Ramos missed the ball, then Courtois misjudged it. So, but apart from that, what Real Madrid does is they're very good at advancing the ball from the defense to the midfield, and they get it to the forwards also, but they lack that penetration, they lack that speed. They slow it down so much that by the time the ball reaches the other end, the other team has the time to reorganize themselves. And
Yep.
when that happens, Benzema also comes out of the box. There is nobody to literally just you need someone to be in the box and put the ball in the net. That is how you win football games. And
Yeah.
I think Real are struggling because we don't have an out and out goal scorer in that regard. There's like Jovic and everyone. Asensio could have started instead of Vasquez. That is one.
Jovic, I'm really skeptical about, because probably he's one of those
I mean,
belonging to the classic Real Madrid group of never gotten a proper chance. So
exactly, and that's a problem. Like
yeah,
Siet James. Zidane says that he was finished, but he's doing so great at
yeah,
Everton right now. So
yeah,
like you have to give them a chance and give them time. Only then
yeah,
they can play. You can't just put him out and just say that go and score a goal for me. So because I think the problems are becoming very apparent that this over dependence on Benzema, this is not working. So let's see what happens. And
and
as far as Barcelona, no Messi, no party type thing. If Messi doesn't score, same thing.
Trishita, your opinion on this?
The standout point of this fixture was they were going to the El Clasico. So Barcelona, I think they didn't have any spark, man. The creativity from Griezmann, Messi, you expect a lot out of these players. Now, on a season when you sell players like Vidal, Suarez, you expect others to step and fill up their shoes. I think there was nothing from them, man. Instead, the debutant Pedri, he played well for 60 minutes. He created a good chance, won a couple of duels. That's it. But I think Barcelona can't take any positives apart from Pedri's performance. They didn't
Yeah,
shoot on target. I think one shot the entire match. And this is not enough to win against gritty Getafe side, man, because they're too physical. There was a lot of controversies in the match, but I won't try to get into it because it was just cruel. So Barca lacks the mentality to grind out matches, especially away matches. So that's Barcelona's shortcoming, and Koeman has a lot on his hands right now.
Yeah, I'd like to add that Barcelona, I think they're struggling to score goals. That is the main concern for them now.
what's your prediction for the El Clasico scoreline this weekend? So starting with Shankar.
So okay, my heart is obviously going to support Madrid. Like I'd want to win,
But I
but
want
I
your
think
I want your brains answered.
but I think there's a very high chance that it might be a draw. Like either 1-1 or 0-0 maybe.
Yeah, Trishita.
I want a 0-0 draw.
Why, man?
A stalemate, a total stalemate, man.
Yeah, probably they have been like so similar this season. Bora?
Yeah.
Yeah, even I agree with Shankar. It is going to be a low scoring draw, either a 0-0 or a 1-all draw.
Yeah. Madrid's neighbors, Atletico Madrid won against Celta Vigo, so that is something to look out for because as of now, I mean, only Real Sociedad is the team that has been playing really well. Other than that, all other teams have been dropping points unnecessarily. Let's see how La Liga pans out lately. Now, moving from Spain to Italy, we've had another derby happening there. We're talking about obviously the Milan derby. So, Bora, your take on this? I know you have some soft corner towards Milan.
When I talk of this match, there's only one name that is ringing in my ears, and that is probably one name that is ringing in the entirety of Milan, and that is Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a wonder. He's a phenomenal player, and I mean, is there anything in this world that he's not capable of doing? I mean, he has just recovered from coronavirus. He's come back to the squad. He bangs in two goals.
Probably winning a Champions League.
Go on.
No, see, on a serious note, like he comes back to the squad after being, no, after testing positive for coronavirus, and he comes back. He wins AC Milan their first league derby since 2016, and he bangs in goals, and he does everything of this at the age of 39. I mean, people are talking about Ronaldo and his longevity. I mean, look at Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He has been doing this week in, week out, season in, season out for different clubs around the globe.
The official last away win that Milan had against Inter in this derby was where they won 1-0 and Zlatan was scored that goal, I think 10 years back. Again, they won the away tie to like this weekend and Zlatan scored a brace. So it's like people may say it's hysteria, but I think it's more than that because they haven't filled up like a personality, a big influence on Milan. They haven't filled his shoes after he left. Again, he was the one who came. It's like a Gareth Bale saga. Like nobody could replace Bale, and now again Zlatan couldn't be replaced.
AC Milan were good on the day, but I think their victory has to be credited a little bit to to Inter Milan not being ruthless enough in their attack. I think they were the better side. They had more of the ball possession. They created the better chances, but I think they could not finish them off. So I think that's where Inter Milan lost the game.
I think they didn't have a plan for Frank Kessie playing so well. Kessie was like a robust. He stopped the passing lanes, and Inter couldn't find space. Literally, they couldn't find space.
Even Rafael Leao also.
Yeah.
Good cross
And
for the goal.
they were very slack in defending. I don't know what D'Ambrosio and Kolarov was doing there. Kolarov, what was he thinking about that tackle in the penalty box? I don't know. They were just very poor in defending, and they were really missing Milan's screen here.
Yeah.
I think.
So moving on from there, we had another cracking match, and that was at that time the table toppers Atalanta. They were playing Napoli, and they were thrashed like 4-1. So Trishita, your opinions on this? Like having Lozano scored a resounding brace. Finally, he's finding his goal shoes. The sort of striking instincts he was famous for back in the early days. And also like Atalanta, they're back in their full strength, but like many clubs who have made their name in a particular season, they haven't recruited well enough to strengthen their already existing side, which I always think is a big mistake for any club. So your opinions on this, and from here on out, how do you see things pan?
I think Atalanta, they have a big defensive issue, man, because when they play man marking football, they press the opponents into their own half and leave large amounts of space between the midfield and the defense, which Gattuso's team totally took advantage of. Like they were using two different ploys. One was playing short long balls to Osimhen, and Osimhen was picking out his passes to Lozano and Politano. Politano was good, man. Like he was excellent on the ball. He was distributing well. He went inside, took advantage of the central corridor that was left. Apart from that, I think Di Lorenzo was good for Napoli. He was creating a numerical advantage, like on the flanks, and he was transitioning the play. I think for Atlanta's point of view, if Papu Gomez and Ilicic are somehow man-marked out of the game, they become reluctant. They don't have options of like playing penetrative passes into the final third. So I think this has left Gasperini with like different kinds of problems and thoughts in his defense as well as forward line. But Gattuso will be a happy man because the people have written Napoli off after Sarri went and Callahan But now again, they found Politano, they found Lozano, they have Osimhen, Martins. They're building a good squad. The vibe is excellent.
Yeah. So before we end the Italian section, I just quickly want to ask Shankar regarding the latest updates on Ronaldo. So are we finally seeing a Ronaldo versus Messi next week? I mean, next match?
That actually depends. UEFA has said that he needs to present a negative COVID certificate at least 1 week before the match.
Yeah.
So on his Instagram live, he came out and he said that he's feeling fine and everything. So I'm pretty sure that his team are getting the tests ready. And if he gets the certificate 1 week before the match, as said by UEFA, then I'm sure he'll play. But otherwise, I'm not hoping too much. For the first match, I don't think there's very less chance. But for the second match, I'm sure he'll be back.
Sure. Let's be hopeful of that, because I know the Ronaldo Messi debate has been quite on hold for some time, and fans are just smacking their lips.
That
for
that
this and
debate
that.
is never on hold. I'm pretty sure.
No, I mean, not in hold isn't like, there has been no head-to-head matches. So
Yeah.
for one to compare, like, there has been no Messi hat-trick against the Ronaldo side, etc. So let's see how that pans out. So before we end today's discussion, I guess we have some news from the world of Indian football. So Himanshu, what can you tell us about?
Yeah, the big news is Mohammedan Sporting Club, they have secured their I-League qualification with a near perfect record. And it's big news because they have come back to the I-League after a long wait of 7 years. And this journey has not been easy because I remember it all started back in July 2020. They had changed the complete backroom staff. Wasim Akram and co, they came in, took charge of the club, and I remember they started building from scratch. They brought in some good foreign players. We previously talked about them, like players like Willis Plaza and Eze Kingsley, and also they strengthened on the domestic front. And I think with all the controversies, the match fixing controversies and everything regarding Mohammedan, the players have really lived up to the billing, and they have kept aside all the controversy and they've performed on the pitch. And I think now Mohammedan Sporting Club, with East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, jumping ship to the ISL,
Yeah.
I think
It fills the void. Yeah, it fills the void that I-League deserves. The viewership will come back, like probably to an extent. Yeah, it's a big deal.
So, okay, things are looking up for the Indian football clubs too. And I mean, it has been quite an interesting week. In the upcoming weeks, we're having a lot of matches, both from the Indian fraternity and also we're having probably the UCL matches starting. And we're having some cracking games that we'll be looking into that. So that's it for our episode. And if you like what you see, do like this video, subscribe to our channel for all the related content. And that's it from us. Peace out, guys. Bye-bye.